Commander Rex Bulldog Morrison was having what he generously called a Tuesday when the alien ship showed up. He was 3 cups of coffee into his morning routine, wondering why humanity had spent trillions of dollars to build a deep space outpost where the most exciting thing that happened was watching dust settle on solar panels when his communication console lit up like a Christmas tree, having an anxiety attack. "Unknown vessel requesting permission to dock," his AI assistant announced in that annoyingly cheerful voice that made Rex want to throw things. "They're broadcasting universal peace symbols and what appears to be a recipe for cosmic brownies." Rex squinted at his screens. Sure enough, there was a ship out there that looked like someone had crossed a butterfly with a crystal chandelier and given it delusions of grandeur. It was beautiful, elegant, and absolutely nothing like the utilitarian death traps humans called spaceships. "Well, I'll be damned," Rex muttered, scratching his graying beard. "Actual aliens. And here I thought the most interesting thing I'd meet out here would be a particularly chatty asteroid." 20 minutes later, Rex found himself face to face with what could only be described as the galaxy's answer to a supermodel crossed with a walking mood ring. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that shifted between pale blue and silver depending on the light, and eyes that looked like they contained entire galaxies. She moved with the kind of fluid grace that made Rex feel like a gorilla wearing combat boots. "Greetings, human," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that somehow made the air taste like vanilla. "I am Zephyra, of the Celestial Communion. We have traveled far to make peaceful contact with your species." Rex looked down at his coffee-stained uniform and back up at this vision of otherworldly elegance. "Well, you certainly picked the right guy. I'm Commander Rex Morrison, and I specialize in not starting interstellar incidents before lunch." Zephyrette tilted her head, and Rex could swear he saw actual starlight twinkling in her hair. "Your species intrigues us, Commander Morrison. We have observed your rapid expansion into space, your remarkable technological advancement. We wish to understand your people better through our traditional greeting ceremony." "Let me guess," Rex said, settling back in his chair. "Some kind of weird alien handshake that involves tentacles?" "Not quite." Zephyra smiled, and it was like watching Aurora Borealis happen in real time. "We practice something called mind-melding. It is a beautiful, intimate sharing of thoughts and experiences. We believe true understanding can only come from seeing through another's consciousness." Rex nearly choked on his coffee. "You want to what now?" "It is perfectly harmless," Zephyra assured him, her skin shifting to a reassuring shade of soft green. "We simply open our minds to each other, share our most fundamental thoughts and memories. It is how my people have conducted diplomacy for millennia." Rex stared at her for a long moment, then shrugged. What was the worst that could happen? His mind was mostly full of military regulations, complaints about cafeteria food, and that one embarrassing memory from boot camp that he'd been trying to forget for 30 years. "All right, why not?" Rex said, standing up and cracking his knuckles. "Fair warning, though, my brain's mostly filled with boring stuff. Military procedures, tactical manuals, and an unhealthy obsession with vintage war documentaries." Zephyrus' expression brightened, her skin taking on a pleased golden hue. "How wonderfully quaint. Your military structure must be quite fascinating from an anthropological perspective. I look forward to learning about your peaceful organizational methods." Rex paused mid-stretch and gave her a look that could have curdled milk. "Peaceful organizational methods? Lady, I think you might have the wrong species." Zephyra placed her delicate, luminescent hands on either side of Rex's temples, and immediately her expression changed from serene confidence to something that looked suspiciously like she'd just stuck her finger in a light socket. "Oh my," she whispered, her skin flickering between confused purple and alarmed yellow. "Your mind is quite organized." Rex felt a strange, tingling sensation, like someone was gently rifling through his mental filing cabinet. "Yeah, well, 25 years in the service will do that to you. Everything's got its place, and everything stays in its place, or you end up dead in a ditch somewhere unpleasant." That's when Zephyra's eyes went wide, and her skin shifted to a distinctly unhealthy shade of green. She was experiencing Rex's first day at boot camp, drill sergeants screaming creative combinations of profanity that could strip paint, young recruits learning that the human body could be pushed far beyond what seemed physically possible, the systematic breakdown and rebuilding of civilian minds into something harder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous. "This is fascinating," Rex continued conversationally, completely unaware that Zephyrus was currently witnessing Sergeant Williams explaining the 17 different ways to neutralize an enemy with a standard-issue spoon. "Most aliens probably have boring diplomatic thoughts, right? Trade agreements, cultural exchanges. Maybe some light philosophy about the meaning of existence? Zafira tried to respond but found herself speechless as Rex's memories shifted to advanced combat training, hand-to-hand combat techniques that treated the human body like a precision weapon, firearms instruction that turned shooting into an art form, tactical exercises where failure meant your entire unit died in increasingly creative ways. I mean, don't get me wrong, Rex rambled on, scratching behind his ear. I've got some peaceful thoughts in here somewhere. I once spent a whole afternoon watching clouds. Of course, I was also calculating optimal sniper positions and escape routes, but still, clouds are pretty relaxing. The mind meld deepened, and Zephyra found herself experiencing Rex's first real combat mission. The controlled chaos of a firefight where split-second decisions meant the difference between going home and going home in a box. She felt the surge of adrenaline, the cold calculation that took over when the shooting started, and the way Rex's mind catalogued every threat, every advantage, every potential casualty with the efficiency of a supercomputer built specifically for violence. You know what's really interesting about human military strategy? Rex continued, completely oblivious to the fact that Zafra was now trembling like a leaf in a hurricane. We've turned war into a science. Not just the technology, but the psychology. We study our enemies, learn how they think, then figure out exactly how to break them. Zephyra's mind reeled as she experienced Rex's knowledge of psychological warfare, misinformation campaigns, propaganda techniques, and the art of destroying an enemy's will to fight before the first shot was fired. She saw military manuals that read like instruction guides for systematic devastation, written with the same casual efficiency as a recipe for apple pie. Oh, and the logistics, Rex said cheerfully, warming to his subject. People think war is all about the fighting, but really it's about moving massive amounts of people and equipment to exactly the right place at exactly the right time, so you can kill the other guy before he kills you. It's like the world's deadliest game of chess, except the pieces explode. That's when Zephyr made her first mistake. Instead of trying to disconnect from the mind meld, her natural diplomatic curiosity kicked in and she went deeper into Rex's memories, looking for some evidence that humanity wasn't a species of professionally trained killers. She found Rex's memories of military academies where humans spent years studying the great battles of history not as tragedies to be avoided, but as lessons to be learned and improved upon. She witnessed war games that treated entire continents as playing boards, and millions of lives as acceptable losses in the pursuit of strategic objectives. Are you okay? Rex asked, finally noticing that his new alien friend looked like she was about to either faint or vomit, possibly both. You're doing that color-changing thing pretty rapidly there. Defarog couldn't respond. She was too busy experiencing Rex's casual familiarity with weapons that could level cities, strategies that could topple governments, and training exercises that would be considered war crimes on most civilized worlds. What happened next was entirely Zephyr's fault, though she would spend the rest of her very long alien life wishing she could blame it on cosmic radiation or bad space coffee. Her species had evolved to mind meld with civilized beings who thought about art, philosophy, and the optimal temperature for herbal tea. When confronted with Rekka's militarized mind, her telepathic abilities did what any sensible system would do when encountering an unexpected data overload. They automatically expanded the search parameters. Instead of just accessing Rex's personal memories, the mind meld tapped into humanity's entire collective military consciousness. Suddenly, Zephyr wasn't just experiencing one human soldier's training. She was witnessing 10,000 years of humanity's greatest hobby, finding increasingly creative ways to kill each other. It started with cavemen, and honestly that should have been warning enough. Most species discovered fire and used it for cooking, warmth, and light. Humans discovered fire and immediately thought, you know what would make this better? If we could throw it at our enemies. She watched early humans figure out that sharp sticks were more effective than blunt ones, that rocks worked better when you threw them really hard, and that teamwork was great as long as the team was focused on making the other team very, very dead. You're looking a bit pale there, Rex said, reaching for a glass of water. Well, paler than before. Is this normal for your species during diplomatic exchanges? Zephyra couldn't answer because she was currently experiencing the Bronze Age, where humans had looked at their perfectly functional stone weapons and decided they needed something that could cut through armor like butter through more butter. She witnessed the invention of the sword, the spear, the bow and arrow, each innovation representing humanity's relentless pursuit of more efficient ways to end disagreements permanently. The Iron Age was worse, much worse. Zephyra watched human armies march across continents with weapons that made their bronze predecessors look like children's toys. She saw the birth of professional military formations, where humans discovered that organized violence was exponentially more effective than random violence. "I've got some aspirin if you need it," Rex offered helpfully. "Space travel gives me headaches too. Something about the artificial gravity messing with your inner ear." But Zephyra was too busy experiencing the rise of the Roman Empire to respond. She watched humans perfect the art of conquest, turning warfare into an industrial process. Roman legions didn't just win battles, they systematically dismantled entire civilizations with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. They built roads to move armies faster, invented siege engines that could level cities, and developed tactical formations that could punch through enemy lines like a hot knife through cosmic butter. The medieval period brought knights in armor, and Zephyret realized that humans had turned killing into a noble profession. They had chivalric codes that made battlefield slaughter sound romantic, created entire social systems based on who was best at stabbing people with pointed sticks while riding horses, and invented tournaments where they practiced violence for entertainment. "Maybe you should sit down," Rex suggested, his voice tinged with genuine concern. "You're swaying a bit there." Zephyra was swaying because she was currently witnessing the invention of gunpowder, which humans had discovered, and immediately thought, "This makes a lovely explosive sound. I wonder if we can use it to launch metal balls at people really, really fast." She watched the evolution of firearms from crude cannons to precision rifles, each advancement making the previous generation of weapons look quaint by comparison. The Napoleonic Wars showed her humans had turned battlefield tactics into high art. She witnessed generals moving hundreds of thousands of soldiers like chess pieces, creating strategies so complex they required years of study to understand, all in service of making the other side surrender or die as efficiently as possible. Then came the American Civil War, and Zephyr discovered that humans were perfectly willing to apply their military innovations to killing other humans who lived in the same country, spoke the same language, and often shared the same last names. Brother fought brother with the same systematic efficiency they'd used against foreign enemies. "Okay, you're definitely not okay," Rex said, standing up and moving closer. "Your skin is cycling through colors I didn't even know existed." But the worst was yet to come. Zephyra's mind was swept into World War I, where humanity had looked at all their previous military achievements and decided they needed to industrialize the entire process. She witnessed trench warfare that turned entire countries into moonscapes, poison gas that killed with scientific precision, and machine guns that could mow down charging soldiers like wheat before a harvester. The artillery bombardments alone were enough to make her question the sanity of the entire species. Humans had built guns so large they required entire crews to operate, shells that could level city blocks, and tactical strategies that treated human lives like expendable resources, in pursuit of advancing imaginary lines, on maps by a few hundred yards. World War II was the crescendo of human military evolution, and Zephyra experienced all of it in rapid succession. Blitzkrieg tactics that conquered entire nations in weeks, strategic bombing campaigns that turned cities into rubble, tank battles that resembled mechanized gladiatorial combat on a continental scale. And through it all, Rex stood there offering her water and wondering if she needed to lie down. If Zephyra thought World War II was the peak of human military insanity, she was about to discover that humans had spent the following decades treating it as a rough draft that needed significant improvements. The mind-meld dragged her consciousness into the Cold War, where she learned that humans had figured out how to wage war without actually fighting, which somehow made it even more terrifying. She witnessed proxy conflicts where superpowers moved smaller nations around like pieces on a board game, each side testing new weapons and tactics on populations that had the misfortune of living in strategically important locations. "You know what," Rex said, grabbing a chair and sitting down directly in front of her. "I'm starting to think this mind-melding thing might not be going as smoothly as you expected. Your face is doing something that I'm pretty sure faces aren't supposed to do." But Zephyr was too busy experiencing the Vietnam War through Rex's extensive knowledge of military history and his own father's combat stories. She watched humans adapt guerrilla warfare tactics that turned entire jungles into death traps, where every tree, every village, every smiling child could be hiding an enemy soldier. She witnessed the birth of psychological warfare on an industrial scale, where winning hearts and minds meant destroying the enemy's will to fight through systematic terror and confusion. The mind meld shifted to Rex's personal military training, and suddenly Zephyra was experiencing modern human warfare preparation firsthand. She found herself in Rex's memories of advanced combat courses where humans learned to kill with their bare hands in 47 different ways, each technique designed for specific tactical situations. Silent kills for stealth operations, quick kills for time-sensitive scenarios, and loud kills for psychological impact. Okay, I'm definitely calling this off, Rex said, reaching toward her hands. Whatever's happening in there, it's not supposed to involve that much twitching. But before he could break the connection, Zephyra experienced Rex's sniper training. She felt his memories of lying motionless for 18 hours, waiting for the perfect shot, calculating wind speed, distance, and target movement with mathematical precision. She witnessed him learn to account for the Earth's rotation when making extremely long-distance kills, treating human elimination like a complex physics problem that required advanced calculus to solve correctly. The urban warfare training was worse. Zephyr experienced Rex's memories of learning to clear buildings room by room, each doorway a potential death trap, each window a sniper's perch. She witnessed humans practice coordinated assaults where entire teams moved through structures with the fluid precision of a deadly dance, each member knowing exactly when to shoot, when to move, and when to throw grenades into rooms full of people they'd never met. "This is really not normal," Rex muttered, trying to figure out how to safely interrupt an alien mind meld without causing an interstellar incident. "Your species' diplomatic handbook probably has something about emergency procedures, right?" Zephyr couldn't respond because she was experiencing Rex's demolitions training. She watched him learn to calculate exactly how much explosive was needed to bring down specific types of buildings, bridges, and fortifications. She witnessed humans turn destruction into an exact science, where controlled explosions could eliminate strategic targets while leaving surrounding areas intact, or level entire city blocks if the tactical situation required comprehensive devastation. The psychological operations training made everything else look straightforward by comparison. Zephyra experienced Rex's knowledge of how to break enemy morale through carefully crafted misinformation campaigns, how to turn civilian populations against their own governments, and how to create chaos that would make enemy forces ineffective without firing a single shot. She witnessed humans study their enemies' cultural vulnerabilities, religious beliefs, and social structures, then weaponize that knowledge to destroy cohesion from within. "All right, that's definitely not a normal color for anyone to turn," Rex said, standing up and pacing. "I'm starting to wonder if maybe we should have started with something simpler, like exchanging recipes or comparing notes on space travel." But the mind meld continued, and Zephyra found herself experiencing Rex's memories of joint military exercises with allied nations. She watched humans from different countries coordinate complex operations involving airstrikes, naval bombardments, and ground assaults with the precision of a symphony orchestra. If symphony orchestras specialized in coordinated destruction across multiple time zones. The counter-TESM training revealed humans had developed an entire subset of warfare dedicated to fighting enemies who didn't wear uniforms or follow traditional military conventions. Zephyra experienced Rex's knowledge of how to track, infiltrate, and eliminate threats that hid among civilian populations, turning entire cities into potential battlefields where anyone could be an enemy and anywhere could be a target. "You're making a sound now," Rex observed with growing alarm. "It's like a tea kettle having an existential crisis. Should I be worried about alien medical emergencies? Because I've got to tell you, my first aid training is strictly human phemic." Special operations memories were the most disturbing. Zephyr experienced Rex's knowledge of how small teams of humans could infiltrate hostile territory, eliminate high-value targets, and disappear without anyone knowing they'd been there until long after they were gone. She witnessed training scenarios where humans practiced operating behind enemy lines for months at a time, living off the land and turning the enemy's own resources against them. The intelligence-gathering techniques showed her that humans had turned information into a weapon more powerful than any bomb. She experienced Rex's knowledge of how to extract information from unwilling subjects, how to plant disinformation that would cause enemy forces to make fatal tactical errors, and how to create false intelligence that would lead entire armies into carefully prepared traps. "Okay, that's it," Rex declared, reaching for her hands again. "I don't know what you're seeing in there, but it's clearly not the peaceful cultural exchange you were expecting." But Rex's movement toward her hands triggered something in Zephyra's panicked telepathic system, and instead of breaking the connection, the mind meld went nuclear. Literally. Because the next thing Zephyra experienced was humanity's crowning achievement in the field of making things very, very dead. Nuclear weapons. She felt Rex's memories of studying the Manhattan Project, where humans had looked at the fundamental forces that held atoms together and thought, you know what would be fun? Let's figure out how to make those forces really, really angry. She witnessed the Trinity test through historical footage burned into Rex's memory from countless documentaries, where humans had successfully created a miniature sun on Earth for the sole purpose of seeing if they could vaporize things more efficiently. "Oh no!" Rex said, recognizing the expression on Zephyr's face as the look someone gets when they realize they've accidentally opened a door they really should have left closed. "You're accessing the nuclear stuff, aren't you?" Zephyr experienced Hiroshima and Nagasaki through Rex's extensive military education, watching cities disappear in clouds that rose like malevolent mushrooms, leaving shadows burned into sidewalks where people used to be. But what truly broke her mind wasn't the destruction itself. It was humanity's reaction to it. Instead of being horrified by what they'd created, humans had immediately started building bigger ones. The mind-meld dragged her through the Cold War arms race, where she witnessed humanity's approach to nuclear deterrence. If one bomb could level a city, then obviously they needed thousands of bombs that could level entire continents. She experienced Rex's knowledge of delivery systems, intercontinental ballistic missiles that could cross oceans in 30 minutes, submarine-launched warheads that could strike anywhere on Earth without warning, and bomber aircraft designed specifically to penetrate enemy airspace and deliver nuclear presents to strategic targets. "This is really bad," Rex muttered, trying unsuccessfully to break physical contact. "I can see your brain trying to process the concept of mutually assured destruction, and it's not going well." That's when Zephyra experienced the full horror of mad doctrine. She watched Rex's memories of military planning sessions where humans calmly discussed scenarios involving the complete annihilation of civilization as acceptable tactical outcomes. She witnessed strategic planners calculating acceptable casualty rates in the hundreds of millions, discussing nuclear winter as a manageable side effect, and creating contingency plans for rebuilding society after most of it had been reduced to radioactive ash. The nuclear submarine fleet was a special kind of nightmare. Zephyr experienced Rex's knowledge of vessels that patrolled the oceans carrying enough firepower to end human civilization, crewed by people who had trained to remain hidden underwater for months at a time, waiting for orders to launch weapons that could kill more people in an hour than had died in most of humanity's previous wars combined. "Please stop accessing the Doomsday Protocols," Rex pleaded. "Those are classified for very good reasons, and most of them involve keeping aliens from having the exact reaction you're having right now." But Zephyr couldn't stop. The mind meld had developed its own momentum, and she found herself experiencing humanity's modern approach to warfare, where nuclear weapons were just the opening act. She witnessed Rex's knowledge of biological weapons, engineered diseases that could target specific genetic markers, airborne pathogens that could spread faster than any quarantine could contain them, and viral agents that could remain dormant for years before activating and wiping out entire populations. Chemical weapons were equally terrifying, but in completely different ways. Zephyr experienced Rex's military education about nerve agents that could kill with skin contact, hallucinogens that could turn entire armies against each other, and persistent toxins that could render vast areas uninhabitable for decades. She watched through his memories as humans developed delivery systems that could spread these agents across continents, using weather patterns as unwitting accomplices. "Your skin is now doing something I'm pretty sure violates several laws of physics," Rex observed with growing panic. "Should I be calling for medical assistance? Do you even have medical assistance? Is there an alien embassy I should contact?" The cyber warfare capabilities pushed Zephyra completely over the edge. She experienced Rex's knowledge of how modern humans could wage war through computer networks, shutting down power grids, crashing financial systems, and turning enemy infrastructure into weapons against their own populations. She witnessed military planning for scenarios where entire nations could be brought to their knees without firing a single conventional weapon, using nothing but carefully crafted computer code and strategic manipulation of interconnected systems. Space-based weapons were the final straw. Zephyr learned that humans had looked at the vast emptiness of space and immediately started figuring out how to use it as a platform for dropping things on their enemies from orbit. She experienced Rex's knowledge of kinetic bombardment systems, essentially very large rocks that could be dropped from space with the impact force of nuclear weapons, but without the messy radioactive aftermath. "You're vibrating now," Rex said, his voice reaching new heights of concern. "I don't think that's normal for any species. Should vibrating aliens be a cause for immediate panic? Because I'm starting to think I should be panicking." The satellite surveillance networks showed Zephyra that humans had surrounded their planet with electronic eyes that could watch everything, everywhere, all the time. She experienced Rex's knowledge of reconnaissance systems that could read license plates from orbit, thermal imaging that could track individual people through buildings, and communication interception networks that could monitor every electronic message sent anywhere on Earth. But what finally broke Zephyr's sanity wasn't any single weapon system. It was the realization that humans had turned warfare into a comprehensive lifestyle. She experienced Rex's memories of military-industrial complexes, where entire economies were built around creating better ways to kill people, defense contractors who competed to develop more efficient methods of destruction, and research universities, where the brightest human minds spent their careers figuring out how to make all of this even more effective. Okay, you're making a sound that I'm pretty sure is causing structural damage to the station, Rex said, backing away slowly. And your color-changing thing has reached frequencies that are giving me a headache. I think we need to seriously consider emergency disconnection procedures. The mind meld showed her that humans had created entire academic disciplines dedicated to studying warfare. Military academies that graduated professionals whose sole purpose was to apply violence more effectively than the other side. And strategic studies programs that treated global annihilation as an interesting theoretical problem that required careful mathematical analysis. She witnessed Rex's knowledge of war games, where humans practiced global conflicts using computer simulations that treated entire continents as tactical units. Strategic exercises that assumed nuclear exchange was just another tool in the diplomatic toolkit, and contingency planning that calmly addressed the logistics of fighting wars in environments where most of the infrastructure had been destroyed and most of the population was dead. This is definitely not how first contact is supposed to go, Rex muttered, watching Zephyr's skin cycle through colors that probably didn't exist in normal spacetime. I'm starting to think maybe we should have led with our artistic achievements instead. But the worst revelation was yet to come. Zephyra realized that all of this, the nuclear weapons, the biological agents, the orbital bombardment systems, the global surveillance networks, wasn't humanity's military at full potential. It was humanity's military with significant restraint, operating under international treaties and ethical guidelines that kept them from doing things that would make everything she'd already experienced look like a polite disagreement between neighbors. The mind meld finally shattered when Zephyro's consciousness encountered Rex's casual knowledge of theoretical weapon systems that humans had decided were too dangerous to actually build. She experienced his memories of military research into antimatter weapons that could crack planets, nanotechnology that could disassemble matter at the molecular level, and artificial intelligence systems designed specifically for warfare that could outthink any biological opponent while simultaneously managing thousands of simultaneous conflicts across multiple star systems. Oh, thank the cosmic void, Rex breathed as Zephyra suddenly jerked backward, breaking physical contact. For a minute there, I thought you were going to spontaneously combust or fold into another dimension. Zephyr stood there, shaking like a leaf in a hurricane, her skin cycling rapidly through every color in the visible spectrum, plus several that Rex was pretty sure weren't supposed to exist in normal reality. Her eyes had gone wide enough to use as satellite dishes, and she was making a sound like a computer trying to process a mathematical equation that divided by zero. So, Rex said carefully, backing toward the emergency communication panel. I'm guessing that didn't go quite how you expected. Zephyra's response was to immediately activate her emergency beacon and start broadcasting what sounded like the galactic equivalent of someone screaming Mayday at the top of their lungs, while simultaneously having a panic attack and questioning every life choice that had led them to this moment. Fleet Command, this is Ambassador Zephyra, she managed to gasp out in a voice that had gone up 3 octaves and was threatening to breach into frequencies only dolphins could hear. I am declaring an immediate Code Crimson emergency. The humans are not, repeat, not, a peaceful species suitable for standard diplomatic contact. Rex winced. Okay, that sounds bad. Code Crimson sounds like the kind of thing that involves quarantine protocols and possibly orbital bombardment. Zephyr turned to stare at him with the expression of someone who had just discovered that their friendly neighborhood dog was actually a barely domesticated wolf with a PhD in advanced murder techniques. You people have turned warfare into an art form, a science, and a recreational activity simultaneously. Your children play games that simulate global conquest. Your entertainment industry produces movies that glorify violence on a scale that would be considered genocidal war crimes on civilized worlds. Hey now, Rex protested. We also have movies about talking animals and romantic comedies. You have weapons that can end planetary civilizations, Zephyra continued, her voice rising to frequencies that were making the station's metal supports vibrate sympathetically. You have strategies for fighting wars in space, underwater, underground, in cyberspace, in alternate dimensions that you haven't even discovered yet, and in theoretical scenarios involving time travel. Rex scratched his head. Okay, when you put it like that, it does sound a bit excessive. Zephyra's communication with her fleet was now reaching levels of panic that could probably be heard in other galaxies. They have contingency plans for fighting themselves, their allies, their enemies' allies, their allies' enemies, and theoretical opponents that don't exist yet but might exist someday. They have backup plans for their backup plans. And emergency protocols for scenarios where all their backup plans fail simultaneously. Fleet Command, be advised that first contact protocols are completely inadequate for this species, she continued, pacing back and forth while her skin went through color combinations that were giving Rex a headache. They require immediate reclassification as a Category 5 apex predator species with extreme territorial expansion tendencies and an alarming comfort level with mutually assured destruction. Rex felt compelled to defend his species. Look, we're not that bad. Most of the time we don't actually use any of those weapons. We just like knowing we have them, in case of emergencies. Zephyra spun around to face him with an expression that could have curdled antimatter. In case of emergencies? You have military plans for fighting alien invasions, zombie apocalypses, robot uprisings, natural disasters, supernatural disasters, unnatural disasters, and something called a Sharknado which I don't even want to understand. Sharknado is a movie franchise, Rex explained helpfully. It's supposed to be funny. Your idea of humor involves weaponized weather patterns filled with predatory fish, Zephyr replied, her voice reaching new heights of hysteria. This explains everything about your species. Her communication with the fleet continued with increasingly urgent updates. Command, please be advised that human military doctrine includes strategies for fighting wars while simultaneously rebuilding civilization, maintaining economic systems, preserving cultural heritage, and planning for post-conflict reconstruction. They have turned the complete destruction and rebuilding of society into a routine logistical exercise. That's actually pretty impressive when you think about it, Rex offered. It's terrifying, Zephyr shot back. You've industrialized warfare to the point where you can wage multiple global conflicts while maintaining supply chains for non-essential consumer goods. Your military-industrial complex is so efficient that you can fight wars and simultaneously improve your civilian standard of living. She turned back to her communication device. Fleet Command, I am recommending immediate implementation of Directive 8447, Galactic Quarantine for Dangerous Developing Species. Humans should be classified as too dangerous for contact until they either achieve enlightenment or destroy themselves trying. That seems a bit harsh, Rex said. We've got some really nice qualities too. We're excellent at hospitality, we make great coffee, and we've got this thing called music that's supposed to be pretty universal. Zephyr gave him a look that could have flash-frozen a star. Your music includes something called death metal, and your hospitality traditions include competitive eating contests where people consume dangerous quantities of food for entertainment purposes. Okay, you got me there, Rex admitted. Fleet Command, additional note. Humans appear to have weaponized every aspect of their culture, including their recreational activities, their dietary habits, their artistic expressions, and their social bonding rituals. They compete in everything, treat competition as training for conflict, and turn their training for conflict into entertainment for the masses. Rex was starting to feel a bit defensive about his entire species. Look, maybe we're a little more aggressive than your average galactic civilization, but we're not monsters. We've got ethics, we've got international laws. We try to minimize civilian casualties when possible. When possible, Zephyra repeated, her skin now cycling through colors that were definitely not supposed to exist in this dimension. You have concepts like acceptable losses and collateral damage and strategic necessity that allow you to rationalize any level of destruction as morally justifiable under the right circumstances. Her final transmission to the fleet was delivered in the tone of someone filing a report about discovering that their new neighbors were actually eldritch horrors from beyond the veil of reality. Fleet Command, final assessment. Humans are a species of apex predators who have achieved spaceflight while retaining all of their predatory instincts and territorial behaviors. They have weaponized their intelligence, their creativity, their social structures, and their capacity for cooperation in ways that make them potentially the most dangerous species in the galaxy. She paused, looked at Rex, who was standing there holding a cup of coffee and trying to look as non-threatening as possible, and continued. They are also completely unaware of how terrifying they are, which somehow makes them even more terrifying. Recommend immediate quarantine, boundary establishment, at no less than 50 light-years from any inhabited system. 50 light-years seems like overkill, Rex protested. You have theoretical faster-than-light weapons, Zephyr replied flatly. Those are just theoretical, Rex said. You theorized them, she pointed out. Rex paused, considering this. Fair point. As Zafira prepared to leave, still shaking from her experience, she turned back to Rex one final time. "For what it's worth, Commander Morrison, you seem like a perfectly pleasant individual." "Thanks," Rex said. "You seem nice too, you know, when you're not having a complete psychological breakdown." "That's exactly the problem," Zafira said as she headed toward the airlock. "You're all perfectly pleasant individuals who happen to be walking weapons of mass destruction with a casual attitude toward violence that would make demons reconsider their life choices." As her ship departed, Rex stood alone in his outpost, sipping his coffee and wondering if maybe humanity should consider putting warning labels on their minds for future first contacts. Then he shrugged, made a note in his report about needing better diplomatic protocols, and went back to reading his tactical manual on asymmetric warfare strategies. After all, you never knew when that kind of information might come in handy.